Many people start off to do great things in life, but then they get stuck and they can't move forward. Often the reason behind this stuckness is simply the fear of failure. People have the fear of failure, they're reluctant to try something new. This fear will stop you from doing the things you need to do to move forward and achieve your goals. So where does this fear come from? Where do these roots of failure, they got a lot of sources, but one of the most common is having what Stanford Professor Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is one that believes that you have a fixed amount of any ability, such as for volleyball or for math. This mindset leads us to believe that we succeed or fail based on the amount of that fixed or limited resource. So people with a fixed mindset are afraid to try anything that they could fail at. The problem is accomplishing nearly anything worthwhile will have a fair amount of failure along the way. And if you fear failure, you can't get done what needs to be done to achieve the great things that you have inside of you. So let's talk about 3 things that could be causing the fear of failure. You're not pursuing your goals enthusiastically. I'm hallucinating since you're listening to this, you have at least a few goals that you'd like to achieve. So here's the question. Are you excitedly going after your goals every day, or are you making excuses and just waiting until tomorrow until you want to take action? When you put off your goals, that's a good sign that you have the fear of failure. Number 2, you've got to be perfect. Perfection is the arch enemy of taking action. Perfect is a common excuse to avoid doing something. I don't know how many people I've talked to who want to write a book, but they haven't because they think that they need to make it perfect. Now, this is where I really call BS. This is simply an avoidance technique. Unless you're doing heart surgery or developing a rocket to Mars, what you're doing doesn't need to be perfect. A need to be perfect at anything is simply a sign that you fear failure. Number 3, you procrastinate all the time. People who say they're putting things off because conditions aren't right. They say when the conditions change, they're going to be ready to start. But you can always find unfavorable conditions. The weather, your boss, the government, you name it, you can find it. You can always find conditions that'll delay you. But by putting things off, you're actually sabotaging yourself and you're deciding to fail. So when you find yourself procrastinating, ask yourself, why am I sabotaging myself? What's the purpose behind this? All right, so I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do to overcome the fear of failure. Just number 1, focus on what you want. People who fear failure focus on what they don't want, which is failure. Instead, focus on what you do want, which is success. When you focus on what you want, you're less likely to be afraid. Spend a few minutes each day visualizing the outcome that you want. Number 2, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? While you do want to focus on what you want, just one time, slow yourself down and allow yourself to consider the worst thing that can happen. And then ask yourself, is this really that bad? Then ask yourself, what can I do to handle that? By planning for the worst and expecting the best, what you'll do is you'll create the kind of confidence you need to move ahead. Number 3, stay present. All worries reside in the future, and all regret resides in the past. When you stay grounded and in the present, you're able to decide what you need to do next to go after what you really want in life. Focus on doing what needs to be done next and concentrate on that. 4, ask yourself, what have I learned from failure? Anyone who has ever succeeded knows that you can learn something every time you fail. This is the only way you get better at whatever you're trying to do. Failures help you become more resilient. Each failure teaches you that failure isn't final and failing isn't nearly as terrifying as you thought it might be. But just as important, a failure tells you that you're at least trying to get done what needs to be done to accomplish the great things that you have inside of you. Instead of just playing it safe, you're actually out there in playing the game. Number 5, hang around successful people. Successful people know that failure is an invaluable part of success. In fact, the reason successful people are successful is they're willing to fail more than most people would. Successful people don't worry about failing. They give their best effort, they fail, they get feedback, they readjust, and then they try again. What makes them successful is they just keep going until they have the results they desire. Look, don't let the fear of failure hold you back anymore. How much has the fear of failure negatively impacted your life? It's probably a lot more than you're willing to admit. If you're willing to take on this fear, you can accomplish some pretty amazing things. Just follow the 5 tips that you found here and just focus on your goals. And soon you, like all successful people, will start failing forward and into the path of success. Well, that's it for today. This is Will Dieck wishing you only success.